go. So I'm Heidi McCutcheon. I'm the Executive Director of the Shelton-Mason County Chamber of Commerce. I'm happy to be bringing this, our third webinar to you guys today. And we are happy to be doing this jointly with the North Mason Chamber and the EDC of Mason County. So Pam.
Hi, everyone. Glad you could join us today. And I just appreciate the connecting that we're doing as a whole county. So Heidi and I have been working very closely together. Just kind of an FYI, I've been on the post for exactly 2.5 weeks. But have chamber background, but just getting connected with everything. And Heidi's been an awesome mentor and connector to get this together. So we're here working together jointly with the EDC and our other partners throughout the region and state and United States to get you the information out that we can as it's coming into us, and it's coming in rapidly. So we'll give you what the current information is today and go from there and welcome your questions.
Thank you, everyone. So just a couple of housekeeping things before we get things started. We are recording today's webinar that will be made available on our website after we are done. If you do have a question, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. If you are not comfortable asking the question out loud, you can, if you wave your mouse over the screen, you'll see at the bottom there's a chat button. And you can message to everyone, or you can pick somebody, and right up top is Deidre Peterson, who is today's host. And so if you want to type a question, if you're not comfortable asking out loud, then she'll chime in and ask the questions for you, and nobody will ever know it was you. I do want to give a disclaimer that as we are giving out this information, we are trying to give you what is most current. One of the things Pam and I have joked about is that what was current was obsolete. What is now current was obsolete an hour ago. And so we're kind of trying to gather and disseminate the information, especially as the Paycheck Protection Program has come out and they're updating the rules and everything as we go. So a couple of other people that I'd like to introduce. Lee Childs from Employment Security Department is here. So she's like, don't tell. But she has a lot of good information when it comes to unemployment and shared work. And particularly, I am pleased to bring to you Chris Eiler. He's with the U.S. Chamber and is well-versed in the CARES Act and is going to go ahead and present. So Chris, I'll kick it to you. Before
you hand it over to Chris, I am not with Employment Security. I am with PacMountain Workforce Development Council. So I don't know as much about UI unemployment as somebody who is from Employment Security, so I'm asking to be changed to PacMountain.
You got it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Give me 1 second so I can share my screen.
If that's not working for you, Chris, I can pull it up also, and then you can just let me know as I need to progress move forward, progress through those.
Oh, there it is.
Okay.
All right, we are all still learning how to use this.
Yeah.
Again, thank you, Heidi. As Heidi said, my name is Chris Eiler. I am the U.S. Chamber's Executive Director for the Northwest region. And what I am going to do today is just give a very broad overview of everything that relates to the business community that's in the CARES Act, and then discuss just also briefly a couple of items that were in the Phase 2 bill as it relates to paid sick and paid family medical leave. As we go through this, Heidi alluded to this in the introduction, a lot of this is changing day to day. Congress wrote this bill to be very, very broad. There are a lot of ambiguities.
If I can interrupt really quickly, there's something up on the screen that says this PowerPoint presentation may look different. It looks like some kind of warning or something that is blocking most of the type that you have on that presentation.
That,
It looks like it's an Apple warning.
oh, I see.
Oh, yeah. Good.
There you go. Sorry about that. Anyhow, as Heidi said, there's a lot that is changing day to day, hour to hour. And that is because the bill left a lot of ambiguities and a lot of vagueness. A lot of that was intentional to give the agencies a lot more flexibility to get these programs up and running and get the money out quickly. But a lot of it is a result of the fact that it was written very, very quickly, and a lot of the rigors that a typical bill would go through just didn't happen in this case. As I said, this is going to be an evolving process. Our folks in DC are working closely with the agencies, and one of the most important things that businesses here in Washington State and the local chambers here can do is relay to us a lot of the problems that you are encountering as you attempt to apply for these benefits. We are feeding that information back into the agencies to let them know how these things are working in the real world. So please keep that in mind. Please keep letting Heidi know when these things happen so that she can let me know, and I can make sure that our folks in DC who are in direct contact with all the agencies can let them know what's going on in the real world. So with that, I'm just going to go through this quickly because I think on one of your previous calls, you may have already gotten a fairly good summary of the CARES Act. But broadly, it is a $2 trillion package that is about 10% of US GDP. It is intended to be a bridge to get us through to the other side of this crisis. At this point, it's pretty well understood that we are going to go through some type of recession. The goal here for Congress was to make that recession as short as possible. So the CARES Act is going to provide direct payments to individuals, $1,200 per individual, up to an income level of $75,000, which then phases out until you get to an income level of $99,000 per year. For married couples and couples that file jointly, it's a $2,400 check. For incomes less than $150,000 per year, that $2,400 gradually phases out until you get to $198,000 per year, where it phases out completely. There's a check for additional $500 per child. Unemployment has been expanded vastly under both the Phase 2 and Phase 3 bill. Most eligibility requirements were dropped if the unemployment is related to COVID-19. Plus, in the Phase 3 bill, there's an additional $600 per week on top of regular state unemployment benefits through July 31st. Individuals will be eligible for this so long as they're out of work due to COVID-19. Once that individual can return to work, that eligibility for the expanded unemployment ends. And as always, you apply for these benefits by going to your state UI, to the Washington State UI office. As for employers, the bill breaks it down basically into three categories: provisions for all employers, provision for larger employers, and provisions for smaller businesses and the self-employed. When it comes to all employers, the first thing that the bill did was make a number of changes to the tax code to help them improve their liquidity so that they could continue to pay their employees and pay their expenses. What the most significant change here is that they're allowing businesses to delay payment of the employer portion, the 6.2% that they pay on on payroll taxes to pay Social Security for each of their employees. They can delay that between now and January 1st of 2021. If they elect to delay these payroll taxes payments, the first 50% of what they've delayed does not come due until December 31st, 2021, and the remaining 50% will not come due until December 31st, 2022. Now, there is an interaction with the SBA Paycheck Protection Program in that if you elect to take the payroll tax delay, you cannot then also request to have loans forgiven under the Paycheck Protection Program. There are a number of other tax changes made under the bill. Net operating losses can now be carried back for 5 years for 2018, 2019, and 2020. It also allows corporations to accelerate recovery of the AMT credit, and then it restores the qualified improvement property deduction. This was actually eliminated in the 2017 tax law. However, they've restored it in this bill, and now businesses that have done improvements to their physical property can deduct those costs. So this is something that would largely apply to like restaurants and retail establishments. One of the provisions that's not getting a lot of attention is the employee retention tax credit. This was a late addition to the bill, so it isn't getting a lot of the kind of attention that the Paycheck Protection Program is. But what it is, it's a tax credit that is designed to help employers who have shut down, partially shut down, or seen a 50% drop in gross receipts, yet they continue to pay their employees. It is a refundable tax credit for up to 50% of the wages paid by the employer to their employees, up to $10,000 per employee. So think of it as a $5,000 tax credit. There are some restrictions placed on it. For businesses with more than 100 employees, this only applies to employees that the business is continuing to pay who are not providing services. So basically, employees that are not currently working, they're not either working at the place of business, or they're not teleworking or working remotely, but the business continues to pay them. So for those businesses, 100 employees, with more than 100 employees, you can only claim this tax credit if you're on the employees that you are paying who are not providing services. Employees with 100 employees, employers with 100 employees or less, this applies to all employees. It applies to the employees that are continuing to work either remotely or at the place of business, as well as the employees that are not providing services and not working, as so long as the employer is continuing to pay them. Again, the goal here is to reward or to give a benefit to employers who continue to pay their employees, even though they may not be working. Again, there is an interaction with the Paycheck Protection Program in that if an employer claims this credit, they cannot also receive loan forgiveness under the Paycheck Protection Program. Additionally, the Department of Treasury is exploring options to give an advance payment of the tax credit so that businesses can get the money now and use that to help pay their employees. The U.S. Chamber has developed a one-page document to walk businesses through this tax credit. It is on our website, uschamber.com. I've also distributed it to all the local chambers in the state, so Heidi should have it, and I believe she's also distributed it as well to her members. Just quickly, yes.
Question about that really quickly.
Yes.
So on the last slide that you just showed. So if it's employers with 100 or less employees, it's all employees paid during the eligible period. So is that right now, is that eligible period?
Yes.
Okay. And is it backdated to February 15th or along with the PPP or?
The credit applies to wages paid after March 12th, 2020 and before January 1st, 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Quickly, the bill also provides $500 billion in loan guarantees for the creation of a Federal Reserve credit facility. The $46 billion of this is earmarked for the airline industry, air cargo, and critical national security businesses, but $450 billion of this is being provided to provide loans to businesses at large. These loans will be provided through your traditional financial institutions, but if a business takes out one of these loans, there are restrictions being placed on the ability to do stock buybacks while the loan is outstanding, plus 1 additional year, and there are restrictions placed on executive compensation. But again, these loans are largely going to be taken out by larger and mid-sized employers. What we've all heard of at this point, I believe, is the small business provisions, specifically the Paycheck Protection Program. This is a $349 billion loan program for small businesses, which are under this bill classified as generally less than 500 employees, nonprofit 501Cs and 501C19s. Those are veterans organizations, the self-employed, sole proprietors, and independent contractors. They are also allowing restaurants and hotels that are part of chains to apply for this as on a per site location, so that they will, when they apply as a individual location, they're going to come under that 500 employee or less classification, generally speaking. Most of the time when they look at those businesses, they look at them as national organizations, and they wouldn't qualify. But for this specific program, they're going to look at restaurants and hotels on a per location basis when they apply for the loan. The loans are they are in the amount of 2.5 months of average payroll up to $10 million. They are provided through national and local lenders. Right now, any SBA 7A lender is automatically qualified, as well as any FDI insured bank or credit union. SBA is also looking to expand the list even further to allow as many banks to participate as possible. Again, they want to get this money out the door and in the hands of businesses as quickly as they can. Now, today is the first day that they can accept loan applications under this program. However, right now we are hearing a lot of different stories about how successful that process is going. Some banks are telling us that they're having no problem processing these loans, but a lot of other banks there's a lot of questions out there. A lot of them are saying they need more guidance from the SBA on how to process these. We expect that they're going to work these kinks out as quickly as possible, but the one thing I've been advising chambers and businesses that if you feel that you qualify for one of these loans, I would encourage you to start talking to your banker now, because right now there's $349 billion in the program. That money is going to go quickly. And we have every confidence that when that money runs out, that Congress will move to put more money into it. But given that Congress right now is not scheduled to be back in DC until at least April 20th, it's unclear when that will happen. So do not wait to explore your options under this program. As for what they're looking for and what they're going to require, they've lowered the requirements quite a bit. They're not requiring collateral or personal guarantees. And then the most attractive part of these loans is that they will convert to a grant equal to the amount spent on payroll, rent, interest on mortgages, and utilities for the 8-week period after origination. Now, when you apply for forgiveness, if you have reduced your payroll during this period of time, the amount that will be forgiven will be reduced proportionately, as well as it will be reduced if you reduce wages by more than 25% during that period. Now, recognizing that this program only was passed into law last Friday, a lot of businesses have already laid off employees. Businesses can avoid any reduction in forgiveness if they, and I apologize, this last point is actually changed since I put this PowerPoint together. Under guidance that Treasury has reduced this week, an employer can avoid reduction in forgiveness if they bring back the employees that they laid off between February 15th and April 26th by June 30th. If those employees are brought back on board by June 30th, then any reduction in forgiveness, and you've restored their wages, any reduction in loan forgiveness will be eliminated.
If I can insert something here too, I've spoken to both OCCU, Peninsula Credit Union, a couple of our Columbia Bank, Heritage Bank, and some others that have said they are not ready yet. They're still trying to work their way through that. They've said if you can hold off giving them a call and wait until Monday, they would appreciate that. I did put a link to the borrower application form so that you can familiarize familiarize yourself with that, and hopefully that can either direct you to different things that you'll need to have ready for your banks and credit unions when that becomes ready. But our local financial institutions are saying, please don't call us yet. We're trying to get all of that worked out, but should be ready early next week.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. There's a lot of information out there on this program, but we have tried to condense it all down into one document. It's a four-page step-by-step document of what types of businesses are eligible for this program, what types of things go into the calculation for average payroll, what lenders are going to be looking for when they review an application, and what you need to do to make sure that you can get that amount converted to a grant and forgiven after the 8-week period. It is on our website at uschamber.com/SB loans. It is also a document that I've distributed to all of the local chambers, so I believe that Heidi has it as well. And I would encourage you to go to our site and download it. We are updating it as we get more guidance from the Department of Treasury. So please make sure that you have the most recent one when you're reviewing this to determine your eligibility. The other small business loan program that is discussed in the bill is the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. This is a program that has been around for quite a while. It is a program that small businesses often avail themselves of when they've experienced an earthquake, tornado, hurricane, or some other natural disaster, and business has dried up. It is for small businesses, nonprofits, all nonprofits, including faith-based nonprofits with fewer than 500 employees, sole proprietors, and independent contractors. Provides up to $2 million in working capital on a 30-year term at 3.75%, and payments are deferred up to a year. Again, that is part of the existing program, but under the CARES Act, they have sought to make these loans much more accessible. The loans are now based on your credit score. They're not requiring tax returns to be produced immediately. You can get up to $200,000 without a personal guarantee, and no collateral is being required for loans of $25,000 or less. Loans greater than that will require require a general security interest instead of real estate collateral. But the real attractive piece to this program now is under this bill, businesses that apply for an EIDL loan can request up to a $10,000 emergency grant that they will be paid within 3 days. That does not have to be repaid. Now, just a little bit of caution on this. Because of the volume of requests that SBA is getting, the 3 days is from when SBA can review the loan application. And from what we are hearing, that right now, given the volume, it's taking anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks for SBA to get to all the applications. So if you were to apply for this today, it may not necessarily be 3 days from today that you get it. But they are moving to process these as quickly as they can. But again, it is a $10,000 grant that does not have to be repaid. Furthermore, if you obtain the grant, but then your loan application is subsequently denied, you still do not have to pay back that $10,000 grant. And like everything else within the bill, there is some interaction with the Paycheck Protection Program. If you get both an EIDL loan as well as a Paycheck Protection Program loan, and you've received this $10,000 grant, that $10,000 grant will be deducted from the amount forgiven under the Payment Protection Program loan. Additionally, if you receive an EIDL loan and a Paycheck Protection Program loan, they cannot be for the same purpose. They have to be for separate purposes. Lastly,
if I could mention there too, that by different purposes, so you can use both for payroll, but you can't use it for the same time period. So you just can't basically be double dipping the expenses. So if you need to pay May's payroll with the first half of May with the EIDLS, then you're able to do that. And then if you want to pay the second half with a PPP loan, you're able to do so.
That's correct. And then lastly, unlike the PPP loan, which is obtained through banks, credit unions, and other financial institutions, the EIDL is provided directly through SBA. So you go to sba.gov to apply for the loan.
I was notified this morning also that if you've already applied for this loan, for the EIDL, then if you applied on or before Monday, March 30th, that you need to reapply. If you've applied on or after Tuesday, March 31st, you're in the good. So.
Okay, the last thing I want to touch on briefly are a couple provisions that were in the Phase 2 bill. The Phase 2 bill dealt with requiring businesses of 500 employees or less to provide paid sick leave as well as paid family and medical leave. There were also a number of other provisions expanding unemployment benefits as well as providing additional Medicaid money for the states, but I'm only going to talk about the paid sick and family medical leave today. Basically, under this bill, the law now, employees with less than 500 employees are required to provide 10 days of paid sick leave if that leave is related to COVID-19. The sick leave can be taken when ill, quarantined due to exposure, to take care of a sick or quarantined family member, or to take care of a child during a school closure. The leave will be paid at the employee's regular rate of pay up to a maximum of $511. But that's if the employee is out taking care of themselves. If the employee is out to take care of a family member, the pay is paid at a rate of 2/3 that employee's regular rate of pay, up to $200 per day. Because this is a mandate on the employer to pay their employee for being out sick, the federal government is going to reduce or reimburse the business for payment of the sick leave through a refundable tax credit against their payroll taxes. And again, this is something that the Department of Treasury is exploring ways where they could provide advance payments to the business, recognizing that a tax credit isn't really going to be obtained until the business files their taxes. So we expect some guidance from Treasury at some point soon on how businesses can claim an advance on that reimbursable tax credit. Additionally, the leave is to be paid in addition to any leave that the business already provides. And there is a carve-out exemption for businesses with less than 50 employees. Those businesses can request to be exempt if providing the leave related to care for a child whose school or daycare is closed would threaten the viability of the business. Unfortunately, there isn't much in the bill to spell out how this particular exemption should be applied. So this is something where we're waiting for some additional guidance from the Department of Labor to better understand how it will be applied. And then lastly, the sick leave, the employee cannot claim the sick leave if the employee is able to telework or work remotely. The last provision I want to talk about is the paid family and medical leave provision of the Phase 2 bill. This is very similar to the paid sick leave provision. However, in that it applies to employees at employers of less than 500 employees. It requires those employees to get up to 10 weeks of paid FMLA, but only if the employee needs to take care of a child due to a school or child care closure caused by COVID-19. That is the only reason that an employee can claim the paid family and medical leave under the Phase 2 bill. That leave is to be paid at 2/3 the regular rate of pay for the employee, up to a maximum of $200 per day and $10,000 in the aggregate. It is in addition to anything that the employer already provides. And like with sick leave, the government is going to reimburse the business through a refundable tax credit. And again, there is an exemption for businesses with less than 50 employees if that providing the paid FMLA would threaten the viability of the business. But again, it's only for FM or for leave related to caring for a child whose school or daycare is closed. And then lastly, just like with sick leave, this is not an available benefit if the employee can telework or work remotely. I've just run through quite a bit of information. And as I said at the outset, this is changing day to day, hour by hour. We are monitoring and in contact with all of the relevant agencies, and we're updating the materials we're putting out. And we're putting those up in real time on our website, uschamber.com. I'm also pushing those materials out to all the chambers so that they can share them with their members. But please keep an eye on our website. In addition to the checklist guide we've created for the Paycheck Protection Program, we've created a guide to the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. We've created a guide on the Employee Retention Tax Credit, and we expect to have similar guides on the paid sick leave and paid family medical leave in the coming days, which I will push out to your local chambers. Additionally, we're putting other materials on our small business website, which is uschamber.com/co. This includes a variety of other resources with respect to things businesses should be doing to protect themselves during the course of this crisis. So with that, I'm going to stop, hand it back over to Heidi, and I'm happy to take questions.
I have a couple questions.
Yes.
One on the EIDL loan, is that one, it says obviously payroll and mortgage interest and things like that. What if there's other loans that you have through a bank or payments for equipment? Is that something that's covered and able to be forgiven?
That's not an eligible expense. If you use the money for that, then it would that money would convert to a normal loan.
Okay, perfect.
And anything that isn't forgiven, as I should have mentioned this earlier, anything that isn't forgiven converts to a loan. The first payment is deferred for 6 months. And the loan is due in 2 years. The interest rate is 1%.
Okay, and then my other question would be, is there any specific benefits to either the PPP loan or the employee retention tax credit one? Is there, I don't know, a bigger advantage one way or the other, or who should file for what?
Well, I think it's largely going to depend on how many employees you have. I think they designed the Paycheck Protection Program to be the most generous one. I think it really kind of depends on your own circumstance, and you're going to have to look at what you would get under the Paycheck Protection Program versus how many of your employees are you continuing to pay, and how much of that tax credit are you going to get by electing to take the employee retention tax credit.
All right, thank you.
I do have a question. Hello?
Yes.
Yes, the PPL and the EIDL loan, do I understand it correctly? You can apply for both, but basically the PPL loan is for payroll expenses, rent, and utilities. However, the EIDL loan can be also used for other expenses within the business. The only portion of it that is, what am I trying to say, that will be forgiven will be the PPL loan, as long as it's used for payroll expenses and rent. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other questions for Chris?
One more.
Okay.
Okay, he asked about Carrie just asked a few minutes ago about business loans and all of those. How about lease payments? When you have lease payments on equipment, can that be used? Can the EIDL loan be used to pay some of those lease payments?
I would have to go back and look at the list of what the EIDL loans can be used for, but it's a broader list of uses. But I need to look at it.
Okay.
I think it's on their website, I believe.
Okay, we'll look it up. Thank you.
We're also, just so you know, in the process of working on some frequently asked question document, because as we do these briefings, we're getting a lot of similar questions. A lot of the answers to those questions are, we need to get more information from Treasury or SBA. But as we get that information, our hope is to develop a frequently asked question document that provides a little more information on some of the questions that you all are raising.
Chris,
Yes.
this is Kathy, and my question is, if we have employees that are pregnant and fearful of coming back to work, whether we reopen or not, they do not plan on coming back to work until after their delivery and after 6 weeks after their delivery. So whether we're open or not, they do not want to be put on shift because of fear. So would they be better off to resign and draw unemployment, and then we just rehire them later, hopefully, if we need?
Well, I don't believe you can collect, if they resign, I don't believe they can collect unemployment. They have
Even
to
if it's due to the fear of COVID?
Well, you could also get a PPP loan and continue paying them.
Okay, just continue paying them even though we know they
I
do
mean,
not plan on coming back to work.
well, well, I don't know.
Okay.
There's a bit of a legal question in there too. So I honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I think the only thing I would add to that, and Lee could maybe have a little bit on this too, but I did used to work in a WorkSource office, and Chris is correct. If she resigns, she is not eligible for unemployment, to my knowledge. But if the only other thing to do in that factor for her is probably put her on a furlough or do the what you call the standby. So you would set her up for the next 4 weeks, saying that this person's been laid off or furloughed for the next 4 weeks. And then she would apply and put in a claim and get unemployment during that time. And you can extend that. And I believe it's another 4 weeks. And I think we're going up to 12 weeks. Is that correct, Lee? Do you know?
Up to 12 weeks for standby, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And so they would be getting their unemployment plus that $600 weekly. And then by then she would, I don't know where she is in her pregnancy, but you know, maybe that will cover it over, and you would have the intent of hiring that person back on.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, one of the questions that I'm hearing consistently, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, so far I've heard, we're trying to figure it out still, is that if somebody is a sole proprietor and they pay taxes based on a 1099, how do they, and they just take owner draws, how do they figure out a salary, particularly for, well, for either the EIDL loan or PPP?
So that actually came up on another call today, and I'm waiting for a little more information from DC on that.
Other questions?
Heidi, this webinar that you're doing, are you guys going to be able to do another one maybe in a week or so when some of these questions can be answered?
Yeah, I anticipate that we'll do one, we'll do at least one next week. And we'll try and give a little bit more advance notice than what we gave this week. So we'll go ahead and get just something filed on the books. We'll probably be looking on Thursday or Friday of next week, so that as the lenders roll out with PPP, we're able to get some more of those answers also.
That would be great. Maybe some of the frequently asked questions can be answered at that time then also. I do appreciate everything you guys have done. It's been very informative. Thank you.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. Rhonda, I think I saw that you had a question. Oh, hold on, let me unmute you. I can't unmute you. Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me now? Okay, my question is, I'm representing Panhandle Lake 4-H camp, and we do have a couple employees. We're trying to figure if we lay them off or not, which is the best. But also for us, we are losing a lot of our renter groups because they can't convene in larger groups. Would you have any idea? We're losing a lot of money because these groups can't come. Is that something that we should be tracking that might be applicable to some of these loans?
Well, it's going to be applicable to the extent that when you file for the loan, you need to make a good faith declaration that you're being adversely impacted by the crisis, and that demonstrates that. I don't know that the loans are intended to help you pay your employees, to help you pay your debt, your leases, your utilities, but as far as making up the revenue you're losing, I don't know.
Okay.
And Heidi, we had a question on the chat here asking, does the EIDL loan application need to be requested prior to PPP loan application, or does it matter?
No, you can do both. But again, they have to be for different purposes.
Yeah, and my understanding is it doesn't matter which one you apply for first. I think most people have applied for the EIDL just because you can right now. And then as soon as the banks are able to figure out the application guidelines, then the people can begin applying for that PPP also. I did want to touch really quickly on unemployment changes and updates. There's been a couple of things that have been brought to my attention. So the $600 per week will retro, and so that it retros back to March 29th. So basically this week, people will be reimbursed whatever their weekly unemployment benefit is plus 600. So once they begin doing that, then that will be retroed also. They're thinking that mid-April is when they should be able to take on sole proprietors, owners, gig workers, independent contractors, etc. So you should keep track of when your hours reduced or when you stopped working, and that is considered for everybody. They also made mention today in an earlier webinar that I was on, is that if you are doing the shared work program, which is where basically unemployment is trying to, or employment security is trying to get you to retain your employees. So instead of laying one of them off, say all 4 of your employees would go down to 30 hours a week. The business would pay for the first 30 hours, unemployment pays for the other 10 hours. I was told this morning that if you are on shared work, you will also receive that $600 additional amount per week also. So that's something to note.
I have a clarification about that, and this is more of a question because this might be a change that I'm not aware of. But my understanding was if you are working 70% of your, let's use 50% because my math sucks. So say you're working 50% of those hours,
Mm-hmm.
you will get not the other half made up, but 50% of what your regular unemployment claim would be if you were completely laid off.
Okay, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, that's the standard way. Now I don't know if they've changed it to say we're going to cover the rest of your wage, but typically that's not how it's been. You'll get 50% of what your unemployment claim would be in addition to the 50% that you're making in your wages.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plus that extra 600.
Yeah, well, finding that out today about the 600 made a big difference because that was a void we had when I was receiving questions about, do I hold, so we lost like a week or so of people trying to make a decision. Do I keep somebody on and reduce their hours or lay them off? And so that was really good information we got this morning on that one. That was good to hear. And the other thing is just out there as business owners, another thing we found out this morning is if you are paying yourself a salary, you, as we understood this morning, was that you would need to convert that to an hourly if you were going to reduce your hours so that you could apply for.
Yeah. So for instance, if you, your salary averaged $40,000 a year, you would divide that by 2,080, which is typically the number of what's considered working hours in a year. So you just take that and divide it by 2080, and that's what your hourly wage would be.
Heidi, we have another question on the chat asking, can federal payroll taxes be covered by one of the loans, or is that just deferred?
I'm going to kick that to Chris because I know he's far more familiar with the tax portion of this than I am.
I believe you still have to continue paying the payroll taxes.
And is it just, is it Social Security that can be deferred?
But that's under the employee retention tax credit. If you get a PPP loan, I believe, I have to go back and look, but I believe you still have to continue paying payroll taxes.
Okay. My understanding though is that
Yep.
taxes are not a forgivable use of those loans.
Correct. I just looked in the calculation for payroll costs. Payroll taxes are an excluded payroll tax, an excluded cost, so they cannot be factored into the equation.
Yeah. That said, wages, bonuses, commissions, benefits, be it medical, retirement contribution, et cetera, those are all allowable payroll costs.
Correct.
Heidi?
Yeah.
When we're allowed to go back to work and open our businesses again, obviously we probably aren't going to go back at a full 100% capacity. Question is right now we have our staff on a standby position. When we go back in, if we only are operating basically at 50%, those that we bring back on the payroll at that time, can we put them on a shared work program at that point in time and allow them to still be supplemented the income that they're not getting?
You can. One of the things that you'll want to consider is if you are looking at the PPP loan, one of the requirements to be fully forgiven for the forgivable amount, you have to have your payroll up to 75%. Okay, 75% of what it was before we closed. Correct. So you could easily, pay your staff 75% of their wage and then you shared work for the additional 25. Okay. But you would have to bring it up to at least that 75. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and if I understood correctly, that 75%, say for example, a couple of those people decide they went off and got a different job. It does not have to be the same people, but it does have to be in the same position, their same job. So say out of 5, 3 come back, but you hire 2 more on and they're filling those positions, that brings you up, or 3 gets you up to 75%, then it doesn't have to be the exact same people that you laid off.
Yeah, and if I remember properly, it's actually 75% of whatever your payroll was.
Right.
And so your payroll can't decrease below that. Well, it can decrease below that 75%, but that's when they start deducing the forgivable portion of that. So as long as your payroll is 75% or more, then that should keep you safe. Other questions? I see lots of newbies on here, so I'm sure that there's something on here that we haven't covered. Deidre, do you have any chat questions that have come through to you?
I've already asked those, so I think we're all set.
Okay. So we have just a couple minutes left, so myself and Pam will hang out. Lee, if you're available, then feel free to hang out too, just in case some of you are shy and don't want to ask in front of the entire group. And if there are any questions, you can reach out to me directly, and I would be happy to find that answer for you, or find the resource who has the answer for that question. So, or you guys can just give the chamber office a call, or reach out to one of us directly. So with that, I will thank Chris for joining us today. Again, Pam with the North Mason Chamber and the Economic Development Council, we're happy to bring this resource to you. And we'll look forward to doing this again late next week as some of these questions iron out, and can answer some additional questions. So thank you, everyone. I hope that you are staying safe and healthy. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Pam or myself or any one of our chamber staff.
Hey, Heidi.
Yeah.
I got interrupted for part of it, so I just want to go over, this is Kathy, so I just want to go over again that if I have a couple employees that don't feel comfortable coming back to work if we're able to reopen and meet the 6-foot distancing rule, how do I put them, so how does it work? I think I heard something about putting them on standby, and then I would still pay.
Pam talked about that you can put them on furlough or increase that standby. I would look at it from just an employee standpoint. If you call your employees back to work and somebody is not willing to return to work, regardless of the circumstances, unless they are told, if they're told by a doctor to shelter in place or whatnot, then that's a different story. But if you call employees back to work and they don't come, then that's considered a resignation. Pam, do you want to mention again the whole furlough or standby option? You're
Sorry.
on mute.
I know I lost my screen there for a second. My mouse must have rolled down and went somewhere else. Yeah, and definitely that thought that Heidi brings to it is, you know, you have the fine line there because you have you do a callback, and if they're not willing to come back, then you have to fill that position. And so if they're not willing to do that, if it was something where it's a medical note from their doctor, Chris, would that would probably go under a paid family leave or potentially?
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah. So you could go that direction too, Kathy. Let me reach out to one of my sources, Kathy. And so you have, okay, let's see if I can find out some more information. I'll email it to you, okay? Or we'll catch up with it next week when we get back together.
Okay, that's great. And then the other thing I received was a message from an employee just a few minutes ago that said if they were going to draw unemployment, they had to apply by tomorrow, which we plan on paying them for at least the next 2 weeks. So
no, they cannot apply for unemployment if they are receiving a wage.
Right.
You can only apply for unemployment once you are not receiving any payroll anymore.
So if in 2 weeks we don't get the loan for some reason or something else, then obviously at that time they could apply for unemployment if we say we can't continue to pay.
Certainly.
Right.
Yeah, and if you place them on standby, then you can, again, just do one letter that says, here's the employees' names, here's the separation date, and that separation date would be when they stopped receiving pay, and then an expected date of return, which
Right.
the recommendation is to put that 4 weeks after the date of separation, and then you can extend that if need be for up to 12 weeks.
And I would do that letter to,
The employees.
Yeah, and you can fax that letter directly to ESD. The number for that is 800-301-1796. And that's listed on our website, masonchamber.com/COVID-19.
And make sure when you submit that letter that your employee that is getting laid off on standby has the same date of separation noted that you have and the same date of expected return that you have, so that there's no discrepancy, because that'll kick them out if they don't match.
I did see a message just come through. If you applied for an EIDL loan, so that SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan, on or before Monday, March 30th, then you need to go back online and reapply for that. If you applied on Tuesday or after, then you're in the good. Thankfully, I put it off till Tuesday.
I always say that procrastination sometimes pays.
I think you're making Deidre cringe. So we have just a couple more minutes. Does anybody have any further questions? No? Okay, well with that, we'll call it a day. I hope that you all have a great weekend, even though they all seem to kind of blur together, weekdays and weekends now. I hope that you're staying healthy and safe out there. And again, if you guys need anything, please feel free to reach out to either of us chambers or any of our staff. We are here for you. Again, thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today. We appreciate the expertise that you brought and the ability to answer some of those tough questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And thank you all for being on. And we'll look forward to maybe hearing